Hello. It is 6 o'clock and we have a lot of people here, so we don't want to keep waiting. So I'm going to call the meeting to order, and the first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item, do we have any correspondence, visitors, or public comment?
I don't know.
Oh, go ahead.
Hi. Sorry, just bear with me. I'm a little nervous. This is my first time speaking in front of a large audience like this before. Hello, my name is Austin Marrier. I'm a 9th grader at MVU, and I'm here today to go against the phone policy at our school. I propose the phone policy has changed. I'm aware that the rules and regulations, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Oh my god. I'm aware that the phone policy at our school was not put in place by the board and that it was put in place by our principal. But I was just suggesting that our phone policy was changed to where we are able to use it at our lunch period, our free time as in our study halls, teacher time, and passing times, and of course keep it to where we're not able to use our phones during class time and structured learning time, because that can be a great distraction to learning and other students in the building, and that's not what I want. I have got over 100 signatures from our student body all throughout high school that I did have prepared for you guys, but unfortunately accidentally left it in the car. So I'm very sorry for that. But I was just hoping that you would take that into consideration for the future. I'm aware that there is a law trying to be passed to where phones are banned in all schools, to where we aren't able to use them at all. I just felt like that could be a slight safety risk for the student body, because it is a very touchy subject, but there are a lot of school shootings and things like that, and I just feel more safe being able to have a device on me, able to message my parents and anything in case of an emergency. And I'm aware that there is like cyberbullying and all types of harassment and things that are used through the internet that are brought into schools, but that's not why we want our phones in schools. It just becomes very difficult when some students just go to check their time or just see if they got a message from their parents, and then we have to bring our phones to the office or the hub because it was seen out. And I know that we're not supposed to bring up our own personal problems, but I'm just aware that it can cause bad home issues for not just myself, but other students, to where having to have parents come and pick up their phone and just being in trouble just for very minor incidents at school, such as just checking the time, can just cause such issues with out of school and in school. I just was hoping that you would listen and take it into consideration. And I know that there is a meeting about the law that is supposed to, well, for some people hope that it passes in Montpelier. And I was hoping that I would be able to attend. I'm not sure if I'm able to make it yet, but I'm going to try my hardest. But thank you for listening and just being here. So thank you.
Please remind me of your name.
Austin.
Austin. What I will say is, first of all, thank you for coming and speaking up. We have, as a board, we encourage any students, anytime you have any issues or concerns, talk to us. And we want to hear your feedback, we want to hear your thoughts. I mean, we're all here to try to help your outcomes and your experiences. So thank you for doing that. You did very well for being nervous for public speaking. I appreciate that. We do support the current policy that we have in place, and that is something we don't have it on the agenda right now. We may revisit it. I would encourage you to write that down and write your legislator, because that is something that the legislator is going to be looking at, and that might become a state policy. And so if you and other students feel strongly about it, then get together, understand the legislative process, and feel free to write. And I'm sure Mr. Palmer or anyone will help you in that. So thank you for speaking up.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And I would look out if we ever bring up the policy again for discussion, or Dan does it, then come back and share this stuff again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else to add? Okay. All right, agenda review? Anything?
It's a busy agenda, nothing to change from my perspective.
There is a pizza. If anybody's hungry, there was pizza from after school, so go ahead. Okay, can I get a motion to approve the minutes for November 19th?
I'll move to approve the minutes of November 19th.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes from November 19th, say aye.
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 All right, oppose or abstain? So that will carry 8-0. 8,
Not 7.
7, Don's not here. All right, motion carries 7-0. Next item, we have student presentation for the FFA. Who's leading that, are you?
Hello everyone, my name is Charles Houston. I am the 24-25 chapter president for the Missisquoi Valley Union FFA. Recently, we went to the 2024 National Convention down in Indianapolis, Indiana. We prepared slides to kind of tell you about our experience and what we did.
I'm working on it. Got too many tabs open. All right, that's the wrong thing. You can keep talking. And
This was my second year at Nationals. Last year I went and I presented here as well. However, it's my first year competing. Me and 2 other students, my vice president and my reporter, competed in our course evaluation. We took bronze. We also competed at our regional level in Connecticut. A lot of the people that we saw in Connecticut ended up competing with us at our national level as well. However, competition wasn't the only part of our event. We had a ton of opportunities. There were scholarships being given out. There was a very large expo center where you could see different opportunities in the agricultural field, as well as get a ton of free swag. I mean, there's hats, there's duck calls, which my advisor hates. We went to some nice restaurants. We had a lot of fun. So, whoever was next to present.
I don't remember the lineup. Do we have those slideshow, Jackie?
yes,
Okay.
I accidentally clicked it closed. So while you were doing that, there it is.
So each student, good evening, my name's Elizabeth Sweet, I'm their FFA advisor. A few of the students, this is their second time getting the opportunity to attend nationals. And then other students, this is their first time attending nationals. This year, our school was able to have 3 different teams qualify, which means they won at the state level and represented the state of Vermont at the national level. We had prepared public speaking, which was done by Madison Rainville. We had our agribusiness and management team, which was Izzy, Jaden, and Evelyn. And then we had our horse evaluation team, which was Christopher, Terrell, and Piper. And then Samson was able to come and join, and this was his first year experiencing FFA, and he really took everything in, which he'll show in his slide. But the first slide is just a few pictures that we were able to capture. Myself and Mr. Godin were the 2 advisors that supported the MVU members in attending the national conference this year. There is over 100,000 members, 70,000 that were there, 100,000 members that are registered nationally. And one of the things that were brought up during the award ceremony for one of the competitions was that there's only X amount of students sitting in this room, which means you are this percent that actually made it this far, which I think was really eye-opening for our students who, no matter where they placed in the grand scheme of things, the fact that they made it that far, went outside their comfort level, pushed themselves to practice and study, just proves where they are at with their skills. We were able to attend the zoo. The top left-hand picture is who we brought, which is great to see. The bottom right-hand picture is the state of Vermont. So you can see that we had a large amount of students that attended compared to the other members in the state of Vermont, and thanks to you all. So I just want to do a quick thank you before the students get started with their presentation. Okay.
We already talked about that. Here's the next one. I will say I am not much of a photographer. I don't take pictures, never been one. I do like food, and I do like looking at people who aren't the smartest at driving. So on the right, we have perfect parking, in my opinion. 100%. On the left, we have possibly the most delicious dessert I've ever had. It was a soft, chewy brownie with a scoop of vanilla, whipped cream, and caramel and fudge on it. It was amazing. I loved it very much.
I went to the trip in agribusiness, as Miss Sweet said, and I was very nervous because I'm really a homebody. I like being at home, but this experience was probably one of the experiences I'll remember for my whole life. Not only did I get to meet a bunch of different people, I got to experience a bunch of different things. At the expo that Terrell was talking about, they show a wide variety of anything you can think about FFA related pretty much, and it was fun getting to fill out this. They gave us like a map of the place, and it had people from every state, like every state was on it, and you got to fill out a name from every state. So like I got everyone except for the Virgin Islands, and I think that's it.
There was
So-
only one person from the Virgin Islands there.
What?
There was only one person from the Virgin Islands there out of 70,000 people, so they weren't even in official dress.
Yeah.
We had no idea who they were.
So, they were hard to find, but I got to meet at least one person from all the other states, which was pretty cool. I made a couple of friends there, and the best part of the trip for me was getting to be around people who share a common interest in me, even if we weren't competing in the same group. They all have this one interest, and that is the FFA. They do a bunch of cool events there. They have this talent show, which was filled with very talented people, singers, actresses, dancers, mostly singers though, and they all had a great voice. Another highlight was going to the rodeo. I've never seen a rodeo before. That was very cool. I would definitely go again. And one of the best parts, for me at least, is we pretty much walked everywhere as we went because it was all in walking distance. But it was nice to be able to also see the city and what the city has to offer.
You guys have to tell me, give me the nod when you want me to move the
Oh,
slide.
next time.
Right, okay. Just be directed.
The top left picture, I believe, is when we were flying into Chicago. Just a beautiful picture. The picture on the bottom left is me with a really ugly fish. You might not be able to see the fish, but I promise it's there. And I wanted to include it in my slideshow.
I think it's in my slide, don't worry.
Oh, yeah. That was also the first place we went, was the zoo, and then the rodeo is in the middle. That was, I think it was the girl and the boy, or the man and the woman who rode around on the horses and did this little light show thing, which was pretty cool. And in the bottom right corner is my friend Oakley that I met. She's from Idaho, Utah. She's from Utah. Sorry. And we all took a picture with her.
Nice.
I really enjoyed going to nationals. I think everyone should try it at least once. For the experience, and if they could, recommend some booths. Could be the Lincoln Welding booths are a good look to look at. I was able to go get a Vibe coffee mug that had a speaker on the bottom. I competed in the horse judging and enjoyed seeing the types of horses we needed to judge. A highlight of this trip was meeting Dale Bribsby, who is a popular YouTuber who focuses on ranching in Colorado, going to the rodeo, and going to the zoo. I thank you for giving me another opportunity to attend nationals. Sorry the photos are blurry, but we were like 5,000 feet in the air, so, you know. These are on the 2 outside pictures are actually fields that we went over in in Indianapolis. It's really cool to see how you can go from half of it being completely city to the other half just being nothing but straight plain fields. A lot of those would be mainly like your bean fields, corn fields, soybeans. The middle one's obviously the rodeo. I enjoyed doing that, so like I said, thank you all again for giving me this opportunity again this year.
So this is my second year attending too. I participated in preparing public speaking. The things I really enjoyed is like being in the city. We don't have that around here, and meeting new people. Actually, one of my best highlights that isn't on here. So for those of you who have seen the SNL skit of like the Domingo skit, okay, so there's this kid named Domingo, and he was so cool. He like came up to me and started talking to me about maple sugaring. I just thought it was so cool. His name was Domingo. Like that was his like legal name, and I just loved it. Oh, it is? Okay, great. I didn't remember if I put it on there. Yeah, just meeting new people, making new friends. That was really great, especially Domingo. This trip is more than just getting like a free trip to Indianapolis, but it's also about putting yourself out of your comfort zone. Like, I don't like flying. First time I flew, I was with her last year, and I had like a panic attack on the plane. It was terrible. So like, but I got out of that comfort zone, and now we went on a plane this year. I was perfectly fine. Like just like putting yourself in new situations. I don't like talking to people. I participated in prepared public speaking. Definitely not fun, but especially if it's like something you're scared of. But like it's all about getting out of your comfort zone. Yeah, and Miss Sweet, I love her. She's the best. Especially when you do all this. Yeah. And like big highlight was Domingo. That was just so cool. That was the best part of my trip, not gonna lie. Oh, and my speech was about like how like the loss of farming is like really bad, and like how we can like solve it and stuff like that. Oh, that's the ugly fish she was talking about. And I got 2 pictures of it, cause yeah. Well, it's not an ugly fish. It's a weird looking fish. In the bottom left-hand corner was me. That's where I met Domingo, actually. Domingo's my best friend. We were at the final 4 of the prepared public speaking. So out of the 50 states, they pick the best 4 manuscripts and speakers, and then they present in this huge room, like probably bigger than our gym, like twice the size of our gym. And they have to give this speech, and the seats are packed, and like just like being able to see all these kids like be so confident up on stage, I was like, huh, I'll never be able to do that. And then the top one on the right is like, I think that was when we're going there, and I'm a sunset girl. I take pictures of the sunset all the time. That's half my camera roll. And that was a sunrise, and I never get those because I don't get out of bed early enough. So I actually got one. And then this was, I think it was like Maryland or Delaware or Minnesota or somebody. And like their whole chapter came out, and they did like they pulled the flag out as we did the pledge, not the pledge. What's it called?
The national anthem.
The national anthem at rodeo. And it was really fun. It was somebody. So yeah.
My name is Jaden. This is my first year that I attended the FFA National Convention. I've never been to the city. I've never been on a plane. I've never been out of New England. So this was a really big experience for me. I really enjoyed going to the rodeo. It was also my first rodeo. So I really enjoyed like seeing all the people there, and it really got me out of my comfort zone because, like what Evelyn said, the scripts that we had with all the states on it, it pushed you out of your comfort zone to go and find somebody with that state and ask for a signature. And a lot of the times it sparked a new conversation because we're from Vermont, so like it's not really that common to find us, but we're there. So we actually had this one girl completely like disregard us, and she did not think Vermont was real. And her name was Abby, and we actually like we got really close. I don't think she was joking. She kept saying it. She was like, "Oh my goodness, no way you guys are real." I was like, "Hi, we're here." This was also the longest time I've spent away from my family, and being around people that I'm comfortable with had really helped me like not be so nervous, and it was just really fun. On the bottom left is Evelyn and I in the hotel, and in the back is Izzy. We were kind of just fooling around. It was a little bit of our free time that we had. In the middle, on the bottom.
Very little amount of free time.
Yeah.
Just put it into perspective.
I think we were just at the hotel waiting to go to like
Dinner or something,
Yeah.
yeah. In the middle, on the bottom, is from one of the sessions. It was crazy to see everybody in the stadium. Like every seat was packed, and it was really cool to see. The 3 right pictures are from the zoo. First time seeing a penguin before, and a giraffe. That was pretty cool. Those were like my favorite animals, so I was really excited to see them. And then the top left picture is from when we were on the plane, of course. And I'm also a sunset girly, so of course I was taking pictures. And I loved the city view.
This was my first time going to a national FFA event. I went and I did not compete, but I went and I explored the expo and all of the other talks and things that they had with my other time. I went to one of the talks, and it was about how to I don't know how to phrase it, but for a job interview, if you're talking to the individual, it's like how you talk about how you display your skills. And one of the favorite parts of that was the expo, which was absolutely massive. Even though I spent most of the time looking around it and exploring the different stalls, I did not get to see all of them. They had scholarships and job opportunities and other things from all over the country with a whole bunch of different people and personalities. I also was really interested in the signing signature pamphlet that they had. I thought that was a really good idea, and I decided to get a hat and get it signed with some of the participants there. Wow. I got all of the states besides the Virgin Islands. Very hard to find. I only met 2 people who saw them the entire time. That was a very changing opportunity, meeting all those people from different cultures and ways. Even though we're all from the same country, it's very different perspectives and opinions. One of my other favorite things was Temple Grandin, who was an autistic woman who changed the farming industry for factory farming, I believe,
And
or
animal husbandry is really her focus.
animal husbandry.
Yeah.
Listening to her talk was really amazing.
Fascinating woman.
These are some of the pictures that I have. The top right is a monkey that was chilling in the zoo. And then I have two pictures that are below that. Both are from different opening ceremonies. The one directly below the monkey, all of the seats were packed for the closing ceremony. And the one to the right was right before the opening ceremony began. They're having a little dance party. The picture on the left is outside the plane window from takeoff. I thought it was really beautiful. And then the rodeo was also really fun.
Yay, me. Oh, okay. So this is my first time going to nationals, and it's also my first year being in FFA, like actually in FFA. So I mostly joined FFA because of my dad, because he was also in FFA, and I was in the equine evaluation group, and I liked learning about, I guess, just how to judge a horse based on like conformation and stuff, and it's like awesome to see all the different horses, and just nice to see, I guess, different ways of judging a horse. And it was nice to meet all of the people. This experience like helped me socialize a lot better. I met a lot of different people, mostly just people coming up to me to get my signature for their the map thing with all the states and stuff. Yeah, the pamphlet. Yeah. My trip highlight was Temple Grandin. I loved listening to her speak, and I liked just the way that she talked about how students learn differently, because it's so true. And I feel like a lot of schools and stuff just put that, like, they put it aside, don't really pay attention to how students learn. But yeah, I liked how she talked about things, and I liked that she changed how animal husbandry does its stuff. She's just awesome. Yeah. So the picture to the very left is a tiger, because tigers are cool. They're just, yeah, they're awesome. I took a picture of a city that we flew over. I don't know what city it was. I was half asleep. I was like, that's pretty. I'm gonna take a photo. The bottom photo next to the tiger is an eagle, because, you know, eagles are awesome. They represent America, because eagles, yeah. And then I got some lasagna from an Italian restaurant, because that's the way to go. And then I got a city picture, because it's pretty. Yeah. Thank you.
My name's Izzy. This is my first year attending National Convention. Personally, for me, it was a great experience to like meet all the people from different states and like see how how much diversity there was. I liked like pretty much everything about it. I mean, other than having to get up super early. I'm not a morning person. I attended two of the sessions, the first opening session and the closing session with Temple Grandin.
It was cool. I don't remember his name, sorry.
I don't remember his name.
Temple Grandin was my highlight, so.
It was really cool seeing them talk about their like different subjects and just like listening to them, and I also liked just like exploring the city and like meeting people. And personally, I've been on a lot of flights, but it was cool. These two have not, and it was cool experiencing that with them and experiencing like the only person that I would have talked to before this trip is Jaden and maybe Christopher. But it kind of like I started talking to other people like Evelyn and Piper and Madison. Like I talked to these people and got to know them when I wouldn't have normally. And it was a lot of fun in general. a cool thing to experience, and I would definitely do it again if I found another event or that I was interested in. That is the only picture I have. I stole that from Evelyn. I am more of a live in the moment and like make memories than take pictures. So I don't take many pictures on trips. So there was a lot of fun things that I could have. But I think that's it.
It's?
Yeah, I just want to really, I want to tell you all how proud of you all that I am. These guys put so much time and effort into practicing, and folks look at it as a 4-day vacation. It's not a vacation. They're up earlier than what they are when they come to school. They go to bed later than what they do when they're home.
It's actually really terrible. It's very. I need my 12 hours of beauty rest.
It's very
I was
stressful.
oddly, like, energized every day though, because I was excited to see new things.
It's stressful, but like if you really enjoy it, then it's fun.
And when you put 5 girls in a room, okay, like they learn how to handle different personalities. They gain so many new skills. They get to gain all of these new experiences, and it's because the school board has allowed us and opened the opportunity and opened the doors to allow more students and more members to attend each year. Otherwise, could we raise that amount of money to send 8 students to go compete or to participate at nationals? And in reality, I'm a teacher. There's only so much time in a day, there's only so much time in a year, and I'm thankful to you all, and I'm so proud of you all. So, thank you again. And Terrell?
We wanted to thank you guys again for the opportunity and the funds that you gave us. So we have a plaque made. It says, presented to the Missisquoi Valley School Board, thank you for supporting the MVU FFA/ad program 2024. So, Walter. Start the meeting out.
You can get that all to the vice chair.
Can we get a picture? Yeah, we need a picture of this.
And you gotta shake hands, you gotta do
Before
the
we
whole
go
thing
away,
private.
before they go away and finish up, I just want to say something, okay? Do you have any more, Elizabeth?
No,
Okay.
that's.
I want to thank Elizabeth. I want it on the recording. Elizabeth came to a couple of us maybe 2 years ago and said she had some students she'd like to go to FFA. There was no money in the budget. They were trying to do fundraising. And this group that was interested had been fairly new in her teaching career. And I remember the discussion we had, and not everybody was in favor of it. But anybody that knows me, if I get a bone, I'm like a little dog and I don't give up on it. And I talked to Mr. Palmer, and I was pleasantly surprised that he said, I'll do all I can to help get money. And some of you were on the school board then, but it was a good discussion. And I think at that time, the board voted $15,000 with the promise that we would find it. And Laura said we could find it. And, you know, for me standing here tonight, this is just amazing. From a few students to all of these students for FFA. I mean, I couldn't be more proud of our school than who I'm seeing there tonight, because as a former FFA member, I believed that we could grow this program. We get students go to nationals, and you went way beyond what I could imagine. So congratulations, and I say, I want to add my thanks to the school board too, because not everybody was jumping for joy when we said we needed money to send students, because people thought, well, we're opening a door and everybody would want to go to Indianapolis to see cows and horses.
There's some school board members that want to come up for the picture, not just me.
Oh, yeah, take a picture.
There you go.
Perfect. My daughter is on the board out there, she has a.
Yeah, I'll write you up things like tomorrow.
Let's go, Mr. Palmer.
Palmer, you're not gonna come join us?
You were the advocate
And I'm
to
not
go.
sure that
You might as well be in it, Megan, because you're.
You're gonna get it anyway. Get in the picture, Miss Dawn.
Dawn, you're not.
You were such an advocate.
Peter, you're not getting in the picture?
I'm all right, I'm all right.
A lot of that.
All right. I'll give you a little countdown. 3, 2, 1. All right.
Gorgeous. And I do just want to say thank you for coming and presenting this. This means a lot to all the board members. This is kind of why we do this, right? It's public service. And all of you students, I notice a difference from the first years to second years. I can just tell, like, I remember you, Madison.
It's a hard one to forget.
We should keep saying she gets the public speaking. And I remember you and so 1, 2, 3, 4.
Chris was the other, right here.
Raise your hand if you're second year.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 4 of you. So I can just see the difference. And so for all of you coming and doing this program, like, keep it up.
Maybe if I wasn't so bald, you'd recognize me a little more.
Hey, it's enough, okay? Thank you for what you're doing. Really appreciate it.
Very good.
We love this. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good investment.
Yes. Definitely. It's like to give kids an opportunity. That makes me feel good.
My face hurts just now. Oh my gosh, I do that with too many fingers.
All right, thank you to the MVU and district office for sticking around for the reports. Is there any questions for MVU? You want to present anything? Talk about anything in the reports? Any questions about them from the board members?
Dan, do you want to discuss the Cal Raleigh autograph signing in the day?
Sure. It was came together really quickly. Dina Sanwar had reached out on Friday afternoon. Literally, it was 2 o'clock on Friday afternoon. She reached out and said if we could get Cal to come on Tuesday, can you help make that happen? And we were like, we'll help make that happen. So we worked with Dina and we're able to get Cal Raleigh. And for those of you who do not know who Cal Raleigh is, he's a professional baseball player with the Seattle Mariners. He's a catcher. He also is the gold and platinum glove winner this year, which is, they only hand those out to one person per position. So he came in and signed autographs. Really humble guy. He came in and he took a look at the trophy case and saw where his dad was on there and took a look at the rest of the Raleighs in there and kind of gave him a nice little opportunity to see that. And then we went down to the gym. He had his gold glove there. He had his catcher's chest protector, which is given by Rawlings for the gold glove winners. He had some other various items there from his professional life. And it was great. We had about close to 600 people who came into the building, and he had the family had brought pictures of him, and Cal signed them for everybody and kind of autographed them personally, and so it was great. Really well done.
Sounds like it was a pretty good night. Christy, do you have anything to add? You just want to share?
I think so. I mean, it was a pretty packed board report this month. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Lots of fun things happening.
Well, it's the week before Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah.
So I understand. All right, district office. Any questions? Any of the members? So since we have a few of the administrators here, Kosha, just want to start and just kind of give a quick synopsis of what you had in the report and any big takeaways?
Yeah, so my report was really focused on the family engagement piece. It's something that we have events in all our buildings every year. And this year, because we were launching our new reading program, we really wanted to do something around reading. We were able to get a professional presenter named Chris Johnson. He had come to Franklin last year and done a presentation on math and was really engaging for the students. So we had him come. He went the first day to Swanton and then Highgate and Franklin. And his whole message is around how important reading is. But he does it in a real fun way. He puts magic in there and tricks and all that kind of stuff. And we had real record-breaking presentations this year. So as you can see in my report, we had 89 attendees in Franklin. Highgate, we had 156 people, and then Swanton, we had 222. That was really exciting to see all those families coming in and listening to his message, which was what we really wanted, is to get people excited about reading and to get students excited about reading. And then at MVU, Jen DeSauger came up with this brilliant idea of renting the Weldon Theater and having the Home of Raleigh playing there. So we worked with the producer and we got the contract in place, and I think it was completely full and well presented. She and her coaches did a really great job of connecting how watching a movie helps you academically. So they had questions that students and parents could discuss after the movie in terms of theme or character development. And more than anything, the movie was just very inspiring. It was a really good community event because it brought people together from the community to recognize the history of this family and what they had contributed to our community. So I'm just grateful to all our principals and our coaches for helping put these events together. There's a lot of planning that goes into it, but then when we see the families coming in, it really makes it worth it. And so we were I specifically wanted to write about it because of the great turnout that we had this year, and we hope to continue building on that.
Okay, thank you, Coach, I appreciate that. Any questions? Anything for Bonnie that you wanna update on, anything that you had in there, or?
No, most of mine was regarding open enrollment that finished. We have 72% of our benefit eligible staff taking health insurance, so I think that's a pretty important thing for the board to know as we're going into budget season. And we did electronic open enrollment again, which we get great feedback on. Just something that we need to work on a little bit more is the, for such an easy system, we have difficulty getting people to log in and participate in a timely fashion without extra reminders. So yeah, so that's just something we have to work on in the future.
Okay. Then my Tanya and Wendy, you're about to give a presentation, so I'll save it for then, and then.
Just a question before we get to that, I do want to hear that. Julie, you're going to comment tonight at all about the December 1st letter? I know it's not in the report because your department saw that.
We got it yesterday.
Okay.
We did get it. I think you saw the news.
Right.
The governor made a statement. I think overall the state is expected to see a 5.9% increase. That's not this community. Our community is looking at a much lower, and we actually expect our tax rate to be different than that news because they're looking at the state as a whole. But as always, our community is in a much better place than overall at the state level. But right now, it's a little too soon to talk about the impact of that information because the leadership at the Agency of Ed and Finance is not really there right now, it's vacant. So business managers in each school district are talking to each other about how do I apply this information? And so there's a little scrambling that's going on, not in our office because Laura is very adept at knowing how to apply that information. But it's a little difficult right now across the state. There's a little bit of a scramble after that. But I don't think it was bad information, and it was less, the tone was less, I mean, the governor at least really thanked school boards such as this one and administration for doing hard work to make sure that it's not, because it's not sustainable to have such high increases.
We'll also probably cover that a bit more when we go over budget draft 3. Before we move on, I know Beth Van is there, and I just came from the Catalyst thing. Pierrette was there. I'm sure we're gonna have a full like report on it, but I did just want to say from attending it, and you were there, very impressive turnout in the program. So thank you for that. You wanted to quickly say anything and say maybe something for our biggest presentation?
Yes, I mean, actually, a lot of people are on the table over there, so thank you so much for your presence and your support. Essentially, we hosted with our State After School grant, we have all kinds of great initiatives that we're really trying to focus on college and career readiness. And we pretty much jammed a bunch of those initiatives together to celebrate them. Catalyst is the Career and College Readiness Center, available for students after school just to drop in and, resume advice, mock interviews, really whatever, looking for jobs in the community, looking to connect with local partners. That's really what we're hoping to do. And it was a great turnout, and I really appreciate all of you being there. We had a lot of our students there, very enthusiastic, and I don't know if you noticed, but really confident talking to adults in the room. And I'm really excited to see that and what we can do to continue working with Dan and Christy to streamline these initiatives and, like I said before, not reinvent the wheel, but supplement what's already going on. So it was great. So thank you for being there.
Sure, what did you think?
Well, it definitely was very impressive. I really, enjoyed hearing from the kids, but also from the people who sponsored students during the summer as an internship. That was really excellent. I hope we can grow that program, because I think that really will help kids with, basically when we talked about our first job, for them, for many of them, it may be their first job, but the experience is, usually so enriching for that student, because they learn how to obviously manage going to work each day, and at the same time learn what it's like to work for someone and not be in school where you can just, well, I don't want to see you. You may not have to be, maybe sometimes don't speak as respectfully as they maybe should, but in that environment, they learn how to deal with someone who's their supervisor and helps them with what they're going to do each and every day. So I thought it was a really great program, and I thought that they did a great job of organizing that.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
You guys.
All right, so district office, thank you for any of the directors. If they no longer want to stay, you can't leave. Okay. Next item is athletic director's update. John?
Thanks, John, for rescheduling, because you guys were at the leadership conference last week.
I'll just move on to something. So that's all there were 329 student athletes participating on 19 middle and high school teams. This compares to about 334 students from a year ago. Our biggest increases were the girls volleyball teams as well as the boys golf team. All coaches had to attend a coaches meeting on August 13th. Topics that we discussed were building relationships with student athletes, coaching beyond the X's and O's, safety, and health and safety with our athletes. There were 13 coaching vacancies this fall. The 7th grade boys soccer position was filled by our 8th grade coach, as no one came forward. There were 4 games that overlapped, and I had to coach the 7th grade boys team rather than for 4 games rather than cancel those games. The high school fall season started on the 12th. The middle school season started on the 27th with player and coaches meetings afterwards. The homecoming week was the week of September 13th to the 21st, with many of our home games were that past week. Athletes participated in an afternoon pep rally and ended the day with a pizza parade through the Swanton Village, and it was a high school dance afterwards. The Northern Vermont Athletic Conference cross-country meet was once again held here at Missisquoi, and there were 440 runners from 15 high schools. And thank you to Ken Sanamore the MVU cross-country coaching staff and parents from that team to make this a successful event. The high school girls soccer team had a cancer awareness day in Ginsburg. Something a little bit different this year that we did, our cheer team traveled to Fairfax on a Wednesday before the MVU at Fairfax football game, and they practiced with them for a couple of hours. And then at halftime of that game on that Saturday, both teams did a cheer during the halftime show. Our boys golf team had a large turnout with many of the players not participating in a match. Therefore, a couple athletic directors from, the athletic director from Richford, as well as Milton, got together and we wanted to give those athletes a chance to participate in a match. And what we did is we sent those athletes all to Richford Country Club, where they were able to have their own match there. Many of our athletes were recognized by the St. Albans Messenger as Athlete of the Week, and many were chosen for the all-league selections in their sport. Recapping the varsity teams, the girls soccer team lost a playdown game to number 3 Green Mountain Valley. The boys soccer team lost to number 3 seed Montpelier. The football team lost a quarterfinal game against Fairfax. Infield hockey, the team lost to Montpelier in a semifinal game. In cross country, the team traveled to Thetford to participate in the 2024 state meet. And then on our girls volleyball team, lost to South Burlington in their playdown game. The annual MVU BFA Powder Puff football game was held at the end of September, where over $30,000 was raised for Camp Tecumseh and the Jim Bashaw Cancer Fund. Thank you to Mr. Palmer, Mr. Hartman, Mr. Quinlan, and several other members of our MVU football team for volunteering their time to make this a successful night. Winter signups have begun. Currently, there are 220 student athletes who have signed up, and last year we had a total of 229, so we're on pace. Last month, the Vermont Athletic Council was held in Burlington, and MVU was able to send 8 student athletes along with myself and Mr. Palmer to go. Avery Guyette was elected last year and to be a member, and she was also this year a Vermont Athletic Leadership Team across the state. This committee also presented at the conference, so it's good to see student athletes come back a year later and present to the conference. We also, this past couple weeks ago, we just had a winter coaches meeting. The middle school basketball and cheer season started on the 11th of November, and the winter season started yesterday.
Are there any questions from board members to John?
John, where are we with our scoreboard and everything for football?
Yep, so the scoreboard, football scoreboard was ordered on November 7th, and it will be here, I think, right at the beginning of the new year. It could take to 10 weeks or so.
So it should be here by spring.
Yep, we'll be here, yep. At the beginning of January, so I expect that to be here.
All right, anything else you wanted to add to that, John?
Headed back after the gym.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
All right, so we're done for the day. Okay, next item is MVU behavior update. Steve Messier.
Hello, everyone. So everybody's favorite topic, right? We usually do this once or so a year. But just wanted to kind of give everyone a little bit of an update as to where things are at this year and do a little bit of discussion and give some reference to where our behavior data was from last year and kind of compare the two. But before we get too far into that, obviously some of the ongoing work that we've been doing here around our social, emotional, and behavioral outcomes has been ongoing for for over a decade, honestly, at this point. And really a lot of that work falls into one of those 3 categories that you'll see there. So our social, emotional, and behavioral team that has met once a week over the last couple of years has spent a lot of time working on identifying and defining student behavior expectations across all environments in the school. We really felt that was kind of the foundation to a lot of the work that we needed to do to make sure that we were kind of all had a common understanding of what those expectations were, the expectations that we have as adults for our students. So we spent a lot of time doing that over the last 18 or so months. And then the next step in that process, with not just within that group, but with the larger staff and faculty, was calibrating what those behavior responses were going to look like and what the interventions that we wanted to deploy across the school and across all school environments. So we have spent a lot of time during faculty meetings and during in-service focusing on what those interventions are, and again, making sure that all of our staff have a good understanding of what is kind of classroom managed behavior and classroom managed responses to behavior, and then what are more kind of administrative responses and interventions that we would put in place. And then all of that being said, over the last several years, we've really tried to put an emphasis on skill building within individual students so that we are focusing less on kind of punitive discipline and really focusing more on increasing some of that skill building that leads to less recidivism of our students, and then increasing some of the protective factors that obviously will hopefully decrease the amount and intensity of the behaviors that we see here at school over the course of a student's time here. And the reality with all of that work is that there's no real true destination to arrive to. It's really ongoing. It's a collaborative process amongst all of our faculty and staff. Certainly a collaborative effort with our parents, and the work that we do with students is really ongoing and ever evolving. So it's not something that we're ever going to really reach a finality to, but something that is kind of ongoing, and something that we're striving to do each and every day that we're here. The next slide, I think I might have shared this the last time I was here talking about student behavior, but this was one of the documents that social emotional behavioral group created about 18 months ago now. It really was, again, that the idea that we needed to have a better understanding or have some consistency in having all the adults in our building understand what were some of the things that we needed kind of the classroom teachers to take the lead on, and then what were some of the things that we as kind of members of the office staff, the administrative team, that we were going to kind of take the lead on and address on our end. This is something that hopefully faculty or hopefully teachers are referencing fairly consistently. I know folks in the office are reaching back into this pretty regularly just to make sure that we're consistent in what those expectations are and how we're documenting some of the behavior that we're seeing, but then ultimately how we're responding to the behavior that we're seeing, whether it's in the classroom, in common areas, or on the bus, as an example. So a little bit of data around last year and where things stood at the end of the 2023-24 school year. So you'll see that separation between major and minor behavior that you saw on that last slide. Across the school year for middle school, there was 530 total behavior referrals. And a pretty consistent number compared to what we had seen in years past. No real huge rise or fall in any of those, either major or minor. But you'll see actually with the way that we've kind of outlined this and the way that we captured the behavior data. So this is all of our classroom level behavior. This is all common areas. This is all of our bus referrals, all kind of fits into that. And then if you go to the next slide, you'll see information around our cell phone data specific. So that was, no, there we go, yep. So you'll see actually that 81 total referrals for last school year was actually separate from the 530. But as you can see.
Sorry, can you just define cell phone incidents?
Yeah, so anytime, so let me back up and actually give the expectation. So we are an off and away is kind of the expectation that we have for students. So as soon as the instructional day starts, that first tone, we ask that students put their cell phones away and shut them off for the day. And so that any time a student is accessing their phone throughout the course of the instructional day before 2:36, they're asked to bring it down to the office. A first offense for the school year, they have it down at the office and they pick it up at the end of the school day. A subsequent violation or use, the parent or guardian would have to come in at the end of the day and pick it up. And then at the third stage, if it gets to that point, we're usually at that point making some individual plans with those students and their families and parents about how we can kind of better support that specific issue. So you'll see obviously the issues in the middle school last year totaled 81 specific to cell phones, and obviously waned as the year went on as far as kind of recidivism around that. So again, something that we did see quite a bit, but if you'll see as we go through into this year's year-to-date behavior around cell phones, some pretty drastic improvements specific to the middle school around that. So the entire 7th grade so far this year, and we're now in the month of December, has not had a single cell phone violation for the whole 7th grade, which is pretty impressive, and I think speaks to the level of commitment that our staff and our faculty here are supporting kids around that, and again, working on some of that skill building that hopefully reduces the recidivism around that. I think we might have skipped over it there, but if you go back one, Julie, the year-to-date data for the middle school is around 175 total referrals. So again, on par, we're not quite at the halfway point, about 6 weeks before the halfway mark of the school year. So we're on pace to actually be a little under where we were last year as far as total referrals, which is obviously something to celebrate and be positive about. Then if you kind of go forward a little bit, I just wanted to give a little bit of a snapshot as to where things were last year on some of the major or the more kind of, I don't want to say drastic, but the behaviors that I think we might often hear about, or you guys might be receiving phone calls or emails from community members about. These are kind of the big ticket items that I think everybody's concerned about as it relates to the things that are most impactful for a school day. And so again, not necessarily huge spikes or valleys in any of these specific areas compared to previous school years. And if you go to the year-to-date data around that, some up, some down, some about on par. So again, pretty consistent across the board, specific to the middle school around some of that.
So the previous slide is
all of last year.
all of,
Yeah.
no, that's just 24, 25.
This one here is year-to-date. The previous one was those same behaviors for last year.
Can you just go back one to looking at bullying and harassment? And that was 20, which does not concern me, but it looks like we're off to a little bit better start if you look at this year, 5.
In the middle school, yeah. And to be clear, that's not total numbers of investigations. That's substantiated interventions or substantiated investigations. So yeah, specific to the middle school, Don, those are 5 substantiated cases of bullying harassment specific to the middle school just this year.
It's down from 20 entire year, I realize.
Yep, correct. Yep.
It's trending in the right direction.
Is there an expectation now that since we will be soon installing cameras on the buses, that we're going to drive the bus referrals down?
Certainly the hope. I think, the more that we broadcast that out to families and students, the hope anyway is that it reduces it. We may see a little bit of an increase initially as we become aware of more issues and we actually kind of have evidence of some of the things that are happening on buses that we might not currently be able to substantiate. That's really our biggest struggle right now as it relates to bus referrals, is that we have to rely a lot on student reports and kind of eyewitness statements, which sometimes are super helpful and sometimes we just aren't left with enough information to be able to substantiate certain things. So hopefully, yes, with the increase in cameras, we may see an initial spike with some of the things that we can document and substantiate, but I think the long-term goal and hope would be that eventually that will decrease.
Daniel, you have something to say.
It's hard, as Steve was talking about, when you have a bus referral, oftentimes it's reported to the bus driver that this is what occurred. It may not something that the bus driver saw directly. It's reported by a student to the bus driver. So then you have to do an entire investigation on it. And then it's, what did you see? Who are you sitting next to? Then you got to track down that student. Sometimes you got to contact the elementary school to find out and have them investigate on, little Susie and ask little Susie what they saw. So it's very labor intensive for a lot of those bus referrals. So I think it would be great if it would. initially, I think we'll see a spike because people know that the cameras are there, and so they'll want to know what happened on this, what my kid was getting picked on, I want to see it, type of thing. So I think we'll see a spike originally until it may kind of level down.
Will there be any sort of like school-wide sort of discussion? Buses are coming on, behaviors are going to now potentially be seen, let's collectively.
We've been talking as a district about a letter going out. I've been working with JR on the language of the letter that's going to go on out. The elementary schools are also in the same boat of all sending a letter out, letting them know that there are going to be cameras installed in the Terracell buses, not necessarily on the M&C buses yet.
Just Terracell. But I think it might, if you have grade level meetings for some other reason, it might not be a bad thing to say, by the way.
Yep.
It's important to know.
As much as a reminder to the parents,
Mhm.
to the students.
Yep. Yep.
Because I know the issue is that he said, she said, right? And so getting to the bottom.
And speaking about cameras writ large, it is super helpful when we are doing some school-based investigations around things that are reported to be happening in the hallways or in common areas, to be able to go back and reference camera footage and have some of that very clear evidence of some of the things that are happening. So continuing to build that infrastructure, certainly helpful, as kind of Dan said, some of those things are super labor intensive and do take quite a while to kind of work through. So being able to have that resource is hugely impactful and beneficial to us as we kind of work through some of those investigations.
I don't want to derail it.
Okay, so yeah, sliding forward to the high school data. So last year, just over 1,400 total referrals for those 4 grades. Obviously, you'll see kind of as students gain in age and maturity, the volume of issues that we're seeing in classrooms and in common areas is definitely decreasing. Again, that pattern is very consistent over the 12 or 13 years that I've been here now. A lot of the work that we're doing around that skill building and those interventions is specific or at least focused on the 9th and 10th grade as it relates to the high school population. So as you'll see kind of where we are year to date in the next slide, considerably down, although I will say the time of year that we are in now, kind of that pre-holiday, post-holiday, the winter blues, so to speak, we do see a large volume of our behavior issues for the course of the year happen over the next couple months. So while that is great to see that we're a little bit lower and on pace to be lower than where we were last year, I'm not so naive to think that that trend might necessarily continue if we were to have this conversation in, say, February, March. So fingers crossed, obviously, but again, I think the fact that we are seeing a little bit of a decrease in the recidivism of some of those issues, I'll put a plug in here and just say a lot of that has to do with the effort and the work that our classroom teachers are doing, but certainly a shout out to Carol Hakey, our student support personnel, Victoria Bella and Kylie Ashton, our 2 SEL coordinators. They've been a wonderful addition to help do some of that skill building and do some of that intervention work with our staff, with our students and our staff ultimately. So I think we're starting to see the fruits of their labor pretty consistently over the last several months. So some of the gains that we're making, I hope, will be durable and be able to kind of continue on that trend. So again, you'll see high school cell phone data. So last year we had 321 instances. Again, consistent with some of the other behaviors that we're seeing, a little bit lower with some of the upperclassmen. Part of that has to do with maturity. Part of that admittedly has to do with they spend less time in the building as well with work-based learning or dual enrollment or just other work schedule and those things. But again, I will say we did see towards the springtime last year a little bit of a spike and an increase in some of the cell phones. And so we did spend a significant amount of time during faculty meetings and some of the work with our staff to kind of recommit to that effort at the end of last school year, and then to revisit it again during our in-service time in August, just to kind of reaffirm with teachers and staff in the building why we're putting such an emphasis on that intervention and what those expectations need to look like. And I think that's ultimately, I think that's a really significant bang for our buck. It's a low stakes, low cost intervention, but the outcomes and the increase in our academic intervention or our academic engagement and our social engagement among students and peer issues really, really significant when we talk about reducing the amount of time that kids are on cell phones and having some of those issues. So again, I think the efforts that we're making across the board, staff and faculty wise, really starting to take hold and hopefully grow roots there. And then again, the next slide, the next two slides. Oh, sorry. So yeah, this year's year-to-date cell phone issues, again, on pace to be a little bit lower than we were last year. Some of that is, again, time of year dependent. But you'll see we have yet to see a student so far reach that 4 or more point of cell phone issues, which does skew the numbers a little bit. Last year we had a handful of students who really struggled with that expectation. And so we had a handful that were in the 5, 6, 7 times, even with making specific plans and kind of trying to get creative about what that intervention looked like. But haven't quite gotten there. Again, some of that has to do with the time of the year, but some of it has to do with just kind of recommitting to that effort across the board. And then this slide and the next one, some of, again, those big ticket behaviors that we're seeing. Property destruction has been a pretty consistent struggle. We'll talk in a little bit about some big areas or some parts of the building that are of concern specific to property destruction, but 30 substantiated claims of bullying and harassment in the high school last year. As you can see, the tardies and class cuts is a really big number as it relates to the total number of referrals that we're seeing, just about a third or so. And again, a big shout out to Carol Hakey and some of the other staff in the office that are consistently committing their effort and energy into making sure students are where they need to be and making sure that parents are aware of that, and the communication with school and home is where it needs to be on that front. So again, destruction of property actually on pace to be a little bit higher this year than it was last year. We did see a pretty big spike in that the first part of the year specific to the depot bathroom, which we'll talk about here in a second. We are on pace to be slightly down in the bullying and harassment category. And then class cuts and tardies is about on pace, give or take, on that front. Again, bus referrals, a little bit lower now. Again, I think once those cameras get, some of the other cameras that get added, we might see a little bit of a spike there. Drug, alcohol, and vape device issues down compared to last year, on pace to be lower. So a little bit of regression in some areas, some pretty significant improvement in others. A little bit of a mixed bag on that front. So this was something that this was a little bit of a new thing that we tried just before Thanksgiving break. We've been hearing a lot or having a lot of conversations with students about trying to get their perspective on not just their own kind of behavior and doing some self-reflection, but really understanding the impact of behavior that's happening in the classroom and what their point of view as it relates to their peers' behavior. So I put together a really brief Google form survey that we sent out to students. Again, we did it kind of by grade on different days. We're still receiving some of that back. We put a couple grades out before Thanksgiving break. A couple grades got that survey just this week. But based on the results so far, you can see that 33% of our students have outlined that the behavior of their peers does disrupt their learning on any given day or during any specific class. We would prefer that number to be lower, obviously, but I actually, going into putting that question in there, I actually anticipated it to be a little bit higher. So hopefully as we get more responses back, that continues to kind of trend downward. The next two I thought were pretty positive. The question was related to our faculty and staff's ability to manage and address student behavior, whether it's in the classroom or in common areas. And 71% of the student respondents felt that our staff and faculty did a really effective job of managing student behavior in those spaces. And though I know we do get a lot of feedback specific to cell phones and kind of the impact that any average student has, and students are really passionate, as we saw, about that specific topic. The overall, I think, message that I am gleaning from the survey is that overall students feel that the rules and consequences and the way in which we respond to behavior and student conduct issues here at school is consistent, is fair, and is otherwise helping support their learning. And so that number, again, was much higher than I actually anticipated, given how contentious sometimes kids and students can feel about, matters of fairness and equity as relates to school rules.
What percentage of the surveys have been?
About a fifth, just over a fifth respondents so far.
Okay.
And
So
that was
still pretty
specific
low.
to high school too. So,
Okay.
yeah, so far that just the high school students have responded to that.
Okay.
Yep. And then, so this was one that I really wanted to include, and this was actually the genesis of the conversation around trying to get some feedback from students. We've heard a lot about students being uncomfortable or having anxiety or just being generally anxious about being in group bathrooms. So we initially asked a question related to, are there parts of the building in which you aren't comfortable or that you actually avoid being in because of the behavior of your peers? Just over half of the students who've responded so far have said yes, there are parts of the building. Of the students who said yes, 77% identified one of the group bathrooms as those areas. I'm not terribly shocked by that. We know that we've had a lot of property destruction in those areas. When we do have issues of vaping or drug and alcohol issues, they tend to be in those locations. We have dedicated some specific resources and supervision of those areas as best as we can during class changes and transition times. But definitely the group style bathrooms that we have right now are kind of that area of the building in which we're trying to rededicate some resources and make sure that we're trying to eliminate the anxiety or the general fear that students are having in those spaces related to their peers and some of the choices that their peers are making.
How many group bathrooms are there?
So we have both male and female in J-Pod, C-Pod, D-Pod, and E and F, just above the theater. Right now, the D-Pod boys bathroom is not open, just based on the amount of vandalism that's been in there recently, so we actually shut that down about a month or so ago. And we have seen a really significant decrease in destruction of property and vandalism since we've done that, so.
Luckily, it hasn't transferred over to another restroom.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
A lot of those kids still meet up. Like, what they'll say is, we'll meet at 10:30. So just everybody just get a pass from your teachers. We'll all meet at 10:30 type of thing. And so we don't always have somebody outside monitoring bathrooms because we just don't have the faculty able to do that. But they still kind of meet. But we have not seen that shift in the monkey, so to speak, of went from D-Pod to C-Pod or J-Pod or anything else. So we have not seen that.
And if I'm correct, we have on the facility the bathrooms.
Yes.
Right? So that will only be over the course of the summer, right?
One at a time.
Yeah.
One at a time?
One
So one
pod.
person.
One pod.
One pod, yeah. One bathroom, section of bathroom.
So it'll take 4 years to do all 4.
If we do all four,
Yeah.
we're gonna, D is where the issue is, and that's what we're looking at doing. We'll see how that goes. We are, like you just said, we don't seem to be having the issues in the others.
What was the cost again for the one?
I don't have it on.
A lot.
A lot?
Yeah.
Well, we don't actually have a firm number yet. We're hoping under 250.
Okay.
It's every mechanical system, every system, plumbing, electrical.
Yeah, it's a big job.
Fire safety, all of that is impacted, so that's why it's so expensive.
I guess I'm an optimist on this, but I think if we do one, then we can maybe address some of the others a little bit more with personnel, cut down. Once the word gets out, it may take a second one, but students aren't stupid. Once they see what you're doing and you're ahead of the game, they start changing behaviors. So I'm optimistic that we get a couple of them done, but certainly one in one of the more secluded areas, then turn it around.
Okay. And then shifting gears slightly, we did include some questions around general student safety. as I think you're all aware now, we have kind of shifted our behavior, our school safety responses, and we're using a new platform, the standard response protocol. So I wanted to see, as we kind of unveiled that this year with our faculty and staff and our students, how that is kind of resonating with students. So you'll see 73% of our student bodies that has responded felt that the safety trainings that we give at the beginning of the school year and the practices and drills that we do at least monthly do help them understand or have a good idea of the things that they need to do in an emergency situation. Over 93, was actually 93.4% of students felt that they were able to maintain their personal safety or aware of the things that they could do to control their situation in an emergency situation. So that was really great to see. And then 84% of the students said they felt physically safe to be here at school, which obviously we want to be 100%, but I think was a pretty strong first response. And hopefully, again, as students feel more comfortable with the SRP platform and faculty and staff are more comfortable in kind of having those conversations, we'll hopefully start to see those numbers tick up even more than what they already were. But some really positive information specific to school safety as it relates to the student perspective of that so far.
How do the students arrive in the morning? Do they all come through the front main?
No. So this actually stemmed from COVID. We have anybody that comes in via bus, the buses come off the frontage road, come around the side, and they get brought in right over here by the door right outside here.
Yeah.
So anybody comes in the bus, and then the front is left for anybody who drives in. So we didn't want or gets dropped off. So we wanted them to kind of remain a little bit separate, and it really reduces the amount of congestion at the front of the building.
So do you have people at both?
Yes.
What was the parents' reaction along the way with the cell phones? Did you get cooperation? Are you still getting cooperation, or do you not have cooperation?
So when I initially sent this out, probably about 6 years ago now, I had one parent who kind of balked at it, and I sent the letter out to everybody, and I had one parent who kind of balked at it. The majority of the responses, every other response was positive. And I think even if you talk to students will tell you, yes, they should not have cell phones in the school. Yes, they might want them, but they understand that it's not good for their education. They do understand that. And it's funny, I'll have those conversations with kids all the time, and they're like, oh yeah, no, I shouldn't have a cell phone. They get it. But it doesn't mean they don't want it, they just...
It's addictive,
Right.
literally.
And it was, I remember just looking out in Commons one day, and all the kids were just sitting there on their phones, and they weren't talking to anybody, there was no conversations going on, and when we got rid of it, the next thing you know, like, literally everybody's talking to one another, and it was like even all the adults that were there for lunch supervision were like, oh my God, this is so much different. Look at this, kids are talking to one another. And it was great. I just think that if we step back in any way and allow them to use cell phones in hallways or, you're just opening a door. And if you allow just seniors. The problem is, we have we've got freshmen who look like seniors. And teachers don't always know who, you can't keep going around, show me your senior pass, show me your senior pass. Are you a senior? It just opens up Pandora's box. And so we have not.
And looking at the results on that, seniors aren't your problem.
No.
So it's like might as well.
Yeah. Seniors get it.
Yeah.
They know it.
Yeah, and really we're at, like Dan said, we're in I think year 6 or 7 now of this and kind of being stepped out. And so a majority, if not all of the students in our building, this is their known experience, right? This isn't new information. This is what they have kind of become accustomed to as it relates to school year. I think the reality is just because cell phones are so pervasive in our society now, we're always going to have some level of resistance to that. But I think the positive impact that specific procedure and that the focus on that has had over the last couple of years, really significant, really substantial, specific actually to bullying and harassment. The amount of cyberbullying and social media issues, a lot of that maybe starts at night or over the weekends and gets brought in, but even having access throughout the course of the day and reducing their access during the day to social media and text apps really significantly relates to reducing those issues.
I'd like to follow up, Chris. middle school? Is it as big an issue?
No, I would say there's a little more resistance from parents in the middle school. Not when I send out information. No one ever replies back and says, I don't agree with this. But when we call home and say, you have to come in and pick up the phone, there are parents who want to be able to get a hold of their kids whenever they want to get a hold of them. And so it's hard for them because they want to text them. They want to, check in during the middle of the day. They want to do all those things. And so I think that that's the piece that they balk against, not about kids using their phone during instruction or texting their friends. They don't care about that piece as much. It's that they want to be able to get a hold of them. So we work hard. There's a phone in the middle school hub set aside for kids to use. It's not any one of our phones, right? It's a student phone. And so we just kind of try to help kids, come in and use the phone to check in, or if there's something going on. Obviously, I've had a kid step into my office, turn their phone back on, check the thing, turn it back off, and then move on, right? So if there's, a emergency kind of situation, but there's almost always someone available to answer the phone when kids are in the building too, so we can get messages.
Bring back the days of coin operated phone.
Well, I did talk with that young man today on the phone, and he was very nervous about talking to the superintendent about wanting to talk about cell phones. And I told him, there's a lot of middle-aged people in the legislature who really think teenagers shouldn't have phones in schools ever. So, I just want you to be alert to the fact, and VSA has pretty much determined that it looks like it is something that will come into the session and likely pass, because there are so many people that really, and there's so much research. There's so much research about the addictive nature of phones and what it does to our kids' brains and to their attention span and their ability to sustain attention, and long-term differences in our kids' brain development because of digital media, specifically phones. So all of that aside, I think it would be really great if both of you have an opportunity to develop testimony or to testify, because there aren't a ton of schools that have done this for 6 years, right? And you're not going to be one of those places that says, oh, well, we did this thing and we bought these little cases for everybody and it's all swell, and oh, we only have 150 kids in our school. I saw one of those earlier in the fall. I'm like, give yourself a pat on the back. We have 750 kids, and it's a lot harder to manage, but it has made a difference, and you can speak to that pretty uniquely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just add that in October, I was at a meeting with area principals from Addison County North. And it's just a half-day session where all the principals kind of get together and just talk about various issues. Number one issue was cell phones. And when I kind of spoke up and said, yeah, we've been cell phone free for 6 years, they were like, what? Like, how'd you do that? Like, they
just said so.
Yeah, I wrote a letter to all the parents and I explained to them, and I said, here's the start date and this is what we're gonna do. And so there's a lot of questions generated from that. But I think a lot of schools are starting to get on that same train.
Yeah,
Well,
I was just gonna say that did come up on the VSBA meeting that I sat on. There is a resolution that is going to the legislator about cell phones. The only thing I was a bit leery of is I like that we can create a policy structured for us. And I'm a bit leery of what broad language they might use, because they're still figuring out all the kinks. So I think that if it does get to the legislature, I'd really like to see it, because again, having something too broad can also create some issues, but I know it's an issue for all of us. I did want to ask Steve, so the one thing is, this data makes it seem like behaviors are trending down and doing well. Unfortunately, it seems like anytime I hear anything, it's like the opposite. Right? It's like behaviors are a constant issue, and behaviors are sort of ticking in the other direction. So is it is it a perception thing? Is it that when it's bad, it's really bad? Like, where is, like, should we just understand and be like, okay, this is actually what's happening, and know that so we can kind of talk to the community about it, or, you know, that's the piece that I'm just not sure, because behaviors are something that, even I know in the elementary it's different, like here, even on a small scale, right, the disruption to classes, we're having more and more issues behaviorally, that has to be trickling up, so like what am I missing?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we've noticed over the last couple of years, and I think the data would support this if we really drill down into it more specifically, is the total number of issues isn't necessarily having big peaks and valleys. I think the students that are struggling more significantly. And so the intensity of some of those behaviors is a little bit more apparent, and it's a little bit more in people's face. And so the interventions for those students and the supports that we put in place is much more difficult than, you know, the average kind of low-level classroom managed stuff. So I think that's a big piece of it. I will say that, and again, another shout out, I think the folks that work on our special ed department have done a really great job of crafting plans that support kids who are struggling with emotional disturbance or ADHD or some other health impairment that impacts their behavior and their ability to manage in the classroom. So I think there, like I said before, there are some behaviors that I think we're seeing improvements on, and then other areas that we are regressing in. You know, the property destruction and vandalism would be a great example of that, so.
And it's very visible.
Right.
Where vaping is visible to kids who are adjacent to it, or the kids involved, but not necessarily for everybody who's walking past the bathroom or in there.
Social media certainly helps spread that word, whether it's true or not.
Yeah.
You know, I think back a few years ago, how many children come home at night and say to their parents, everybody behaved well in school today? How many go home and say, a kid on the school bus was smoking, you know? And then all of a sudden everybody's smoking, so it's hard data to tie down, but at least it looks like we're trending right.
Well, I just want to say thanks. It's already 7:30, so are we gonna get another update sometime in the spring? Potentially?
Sure.
Would you like one? Yeah.
Peter?
Just before we leave the cell phone discussion, I just wanted, I thought it was interesting that you talked about the lunchtime, people communicating after that. Because my son was in there when that policy was put in place. He wasn't happy about it. I asked him how it was going, like towards the end of the year, and he said I wouldn't go back. He said we actually communicate during lunchtime, we're talking, we're interacting. He said before, like you said, nobody was talking to each other. So he thought it was, and I think, just thinking about that, and you're saying, how did you do it? Students had a better experience, right? So that's why it works, because they're not fighting it, because they're enjoying being with each other, which is a social interaction that they weren't getting that you need in school, right? I mean, that's part of why we're here.
Right.
So
It's, yeah, and we've had that discussion a lot, and you know, it's, kids will, if you give them the opportunity to sit there and be on the phone, they will. And anybody who's got kids and been around kids know that, and unless you tell them, put it off, put it down, put it away, you know, they'll continue to be on it. And you know, sometimes you gotta be the adult for them and tell them, you know, this wrong time, wrong place.
Be careful with adult park. Go to Hannaford's or in the stores. You get in the line to check out, and so many people are on their phones.
Sure. They don't talk to people one another anymore. Sure.
All right, well, thank you, Steve, thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Appreciate that. Tanya, Wendy, patient, ready?
Yes, we're ready. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Tanya and I are here to provide a special education update and a summary of the work that we're doing to support our system and plan for the future. Before we do, we're just going to, wait for the superintendent to bring up the presentation.
It's a lot of tabs tonight. You know I struggle with this
Under a lot of pressure to
I'm
that.
going to apologize too. We're all over here on Sniffle Street in this corner.
I know, I chose my seat wrong.
Yes, so
Just lean this way.
all
I'm
sticking
fine.
together.
Yeah. Free seat over here. Non-sniffle. Non-sniffle person, come on.
So before we get into the overview, we wanted to just provide an overview or a review for some of you of our roles and the roles that we play in student services. So on the next slide here, Tanya.
So Tanya Hayes, Director of Student Services, pre-K to 12. So kind of an umbrella term. And underneath that, my primary role is around focus on our behavior systems and our social emotional development inside of our support system. And that looks like supporting at the district level, at the building-based level, and then at times on individual IEP teams, sort of decision-making for individual students. Additionally, I oversee our English learner programming and supervise the EL teacher. I supervise our district BCBA behavior consultant. I supervise and support, now I'm losing track, our engagement and truancy coordinator, Celine Riando. And I also serve as the district Title IX coordinator and 504 coordinator. So kind of a smattering of different things, but those are services that really support all students within the pyramid, not just special education, which is what Wendy thinks about mostly.
And I'm the Director of Special Education and Early Childhood. And in that role, I am supporting special education oversight as a pre-K-12 system. So compliance and monitoring that we do with the Agency of Education, our district special education processes and procedures, professional development, any of the other administrative type pieces that we have to do and that we're responsible for, Medicaid, anything related to IDAB, the list is all there. This year I'm taking on the multi-state alternate assessment coordination. I'll be coordinating that across the district for students that require that for their state assessment. And then I also day-to-day support the special education system focus on pre-K to 6. So like Tanya, I'm focused on the district pre-K to 6 system, supporting each schools in their pre-K to 6 special education services, and then also supporting at the student and family level when needed. I supervise and evaluate special educators, sometimes in conjunction with the building principals, sometimes depending on the size of evaluations that they're doing across their staff. I might be the person evaluating the special educators, the school psychologists, the SLPs, OT, PT. I participate in the elementary building meetings and help facilitate PLCs with the special education teams and serve as the district LEA or local education agency representative, which is required for us to have at the table. I am also the homeless liaison, so I help to take referrals for families that are at risk of being homeless or who are experiencing homelessness, and help make sure that we're removing barriers for those students in accessing their education at their school of origin. It means I also collaborate with districts around us when we have students that are outside of our district, or if they have students that are residing within our geographic area. We're all responsible for helping make sure that we work together to make sure those students can get to their school of origin. And then I'm also in supporting pre-K support services. So out of our office, that's all of the Act 166 coordination and administration. That's working with community-based partners for universal access pre-K, anything related to licensing and the Bright Futures information system, and providing technical support for the supervision and the day-to-day operation of licensed pre-K programs within each of the schools to the principals as needed. So those are the roles that we each provide, and in those roles, we're going to talk today about where we are with our special education students who are eligible for special education in our district. Our first slide is our child count over the last 3 years. In the top row, we have our total enrollment as a district, all of the students that attend pre-K to 12. And then in the second row, we have the students that are eligible for special education. And as you can see, we've been pretty steady in the last 3 years, that 21% of our average daily membership 2 school years ago, up to 23% last year and this year of students are eligible for special education. This number is high. Down in the bottom row, you'll see that recently reported in the Vermont Landscapes school year 22-23, which is the most recent information that the Agency of Education provided. The percentage of students served under IDEA or who are eligible for special education services in Vermont was 18.45%, and nationally it was 15%. So we are on the high side. And at the end of our presentation, we'll be sharing with you some of the work that we're doing together and the work that we're doing as a district to try to align our percentages over time to be more closely aligned with the state averages. Next slide, please. The next slide breaks down our child count, or the total population of students who are eligible for special education by their disability categories. The disability categories are identified as the primary disability for students. That's what's determined when they are found eligible, and that's how the state pulls this data from us when we are monitored and when they're pulling that information. So you see the categories on the left-hand side, and the first column to the right of the categories show our percentages for this year. So out of all of the students that we're serving that are eligible this year, 7% of those are identified as their primary disability being autism spectrum disorder. The next column over is the Vermont school year, again, school year 22-23. So that is 2 school years ago. Vermont's average was 8.15. And nationally, during that school year, the average was 13%. So if you take a minute and look at the different categories and where we are this year in relation to the most recently shared data, we are close percentage-wise to many of many of the categories to Vermont's data. National data, you'll see there's some pretty big discrepancies at time. Under emotional disturbance, for example, we're at 16%, which is a little up from Vermont's 13.72, and nationally it's at 4%. So why is that? Well, it's not because we have more emotionally disturbed students with emotional disturbance as their primary disability. Nationwide, the criteria for that category is different than Vermont has looked at it and how Vermont uses it. So we're more aligned with Vermont and the practice here. Some of the other areas that we're a little above in our percentages, developmental delay, we're at 23%, whereas Vermont was at 17.75 and nationally it was 7%. Again, nationally, the way they come to that determination is different than what Vermont has. Developmental delay is the category that is used for early childhood and young children. So it is a disability category for children in that 3 to 5 range, all the way up to the age of 6 when they're found eligible, which means that it can be their category that they are identified under up through age 8, when they would then go into a school-aged IEP.
I think it's important to emphasize that Vermont has much broader, more generous criteria for categorizing students as being at risk for having a disability. So that's why Vermont has a lot of regulations that are more open, and that's an example of the rest of compared to the rest of the country.
And that's the way it's been for the last 40,
Oh, at
50
least 20 years, yeah.
Very, very much so.
Do you want me to move to the next slide?
Yes, please. So that is representative of the students that we're serving. And the next few slides are going to show you information about who we have serving those students, right? So in looking at our professional staff, specifically special education teachers, we've been pretty consistent over the last 3 years, hovering at the 29-30 mark across the district for licensed special educators. Looking at our entire population, or our saturation of special educators compared to our total enrollment of students in the district, we're pretty consistent again with 1 special educator for every 60 students. That's important for a variety of reasons, that, you know, if students are in helping us with identifying students as part of our child find, so that number has remained consistent. If you look at the ratio of special education teachers to students eligible for special education, that has also remained consistent. So 1 special educator for every 13 or 14 students. Now, that's the ratio. In practice, that caseload sizes can vary. So we have special educators with much larger caseloads. Early childhood comes to mind, for example, serving in the mid-20s of students on their caseload, and then all the way down to some special educators who may have a much smaller caseload because of the needs of the students on their caseload. So maybe their intensive needs, the special educators focus on students with the intensive special needs. So it varies depending on, caseload sizes vary depending on student need. And that varies from building to building, and how each team is kind of structuring the resources in their building to meet the needs of the students.
I just want to, for the board's sake, the reason why we look at that density, so the ratio of special ed to total enrollment, as well as the number of staff to eligible kids. We already told you we have a high number of kids who are eligible for special ed. So that ratio could be out of whack with what best practice norms are. And so norms nationally, you have a healthy ratio if your density for your total population is between 60 and 80 students per special ed professional. So we like to examine those to make sure that we're on track. We do it both at the school level and district-wide.
Thank you. This slide and table presents information about other professional staffing, specifically speech and language pathologists, OTs, PTs. I am now realizing that I left school psychologists off this.
That's okay, they're special.
They are. We have 3 of those. So our SLPs, I've reported on this quite a bit in the last couple of years through the board reports. We 3 years ago had 7.6 SLPs in person, and since that time have gone down last year to 6.6, which consisted of 5 in person and 1.6 contracted FTEs. And then now this year we're down to 5 SLPs, 3 in person and 2 contracted FTEs. And the change in number of SLPs over the last 3 years is due to a variety of reasons, including retirement, relocation, moving from full-time work to part-time work. So there's been a variety of reasons that number has gone down, and it has been very challenging to fill those positions. I've reported on that quite a few times. I am in looking at the ratio of SLPs to students eligible for special education, we have gone from 1 SLP for every 49 eligible for special education, students who are eligible for special education. Now we're at a ratio of 1 for every 82. That does not mean that SLPs have 82 students on their caseload, because not every student who's eligible for special education requires speech and language services. But at any given time, any student who is eligible may require it, depending on their specific needs. I am pleased to report that our current model of the 5 FTEs, 3 in person, 2 contracted FTEs, we are meeting our obligations. We are meeting our evaluations, we are meeting our service requirements, and I'm pleased to say I meet with the SLPs every month, and we loop in the 2 FTE equivalents, which actually consists of 4 SLPs that are provided to us through a contracted service to equal 2 full-time SLPs. They join us consistently, and the shift since we first started using contracted services for teleservice has been really remarkable. I'm very proud of the work that the in-person team and in-person school-based teams have done around this, and when we get together, I hear over and over just about the quality of the services that students are receiving. Have had a chance myself to sit in on some of those, and look forward to kind of reporting out later on the outcomes now that we're moving into year 2 and having more of those contracted services.
Do we continue to advertise for ourselves online?
Yes, but we had
all the time
0
And 0.
qualified applicants.
Yes, yeah, unfortunately.
Of course, it's a statewide, well, it's a national issue. But
It is a
certainly
national
it's-
issue, yes.
When I went to the case conference that I wrote about in my board report this month, in the hall where all of the vendors are, I'm not even gonna say every other booth, but like 2 booths would be about, do you need SLPs? Do you need SLPs? Do you need school psychologists? Do you need SLPs? There are so many companies out there promising to bring you real people. Over the summer, I engaged with quite a few of them to see if we could contract service with them providing a real person. Nobody produced a real person out of all of them. But they still made it to the conference to hand out those little stress balls, so that was.
It's big business.
Yes, it is big business.
So when you talk about,
I need another stress ball.
so when you talk about contracted, you mean they're virtual?
Yes.
Yes, and well, the 0.6 that we have, we had last year also included some contracted evaluation support from an SLP who had retired from the district. And so last year we had 1 FTE providing teleservice and 0.6 providing evaluation support. And this year now, we actually get evaluation support through our contracted teletherapists. So, and again, I'm just so grateful to our 3 SLPs who are still with us for the work that they do in helping be the people in the buildings, helping teams with decisions around which students, that it's appropriate to do virtual evaluation, which students really need that in person. So they really are the ones on the day-to-day that help that, and very appreciative. We have 1 PT, 1 OT for the entire population of eligible students. They're very busy. I put the ratio down for them, for each of them. It is 1 to however many students we have eligible at any given time. PT or OT could potentially crop up as a service need. Next, we have our student services support staffing table. And so our number of paraprofessionals in that top row, that is the number of support staff positions in the last 3 years that are available in our district to provide support services for students eligible for special education. So not all of their time may be allocated to providing special education services, And because of that, they may not be completely funded through special education funding, because they may perform other duties to support students in the school that are not eligible for
It's a
special
head
education.
count, it's not an FTE
Right.
special ed funded count.
But again, that's that idea of, do we have enough people? We've got the ratio of support staff to the total enrollment across the district. There's one support staff member for every 18 or 19 students across the district over the last 3 years consistently. It works out to exactly the same for the last 3 years, one support staff person for every 4 students eligible. And when, it depends on what the student needs are. So, we have some students that require one-to-one support. And so a support staff person, while we have one for every 4 eligible students, they may be with one student because of that student's need. We have support staff that support maybe small group work. So you'll see in a few minutes some of the work that we're doing to really support our system now and plan for the future is really about taking a look at all of those ratios, how services are being provided, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. Tanya.
Right. So this slide is highlights the contracted services that we utilize, and so the two, with regards to special ed, there's 2 primary pieces here, 2 primary different kinds of contracts. One is contracted services through NCSS for behavior interventionists, and those behavior interventionists are one-to-one folks. That could either be for students with emotional disturbance, so following strict behavior plans, helping students navigate their day, providing reinforcements, but that one-to-one. Or they could be a similar role, but for students with autism. So there's 2 different kinds in there, and there's 2 different contracts, and the autism contracts tend to be more money. They're a little bit more expensive, so they're not teased out in here, they're kind of lumped together. And within that contracted line, the other thing to note is that in some cases, it's a 2-to-1 scenario where there's 2 BIs for, say, 1 student. And that's not often that happens, but it does happen depending on the nature of the child's disability. So as you look at the contracted services over time, ours have increased. And so these are people that come into our buildings, they work in our buildings all day long with students. We also get with that service support from NCSS BCBA that develops the program and oversees those programs, and then sort of that team expertise from NCSS around those support staff. So these are our numbers over time. The 25-26 column is a projection. It's a little bit hard to nail that down because even the 24-25 column could change. They do change often. And so this is just a projection, like on the highest side, like if everybody stayed and if we added some that are sort of question marks, right, that number would go up.
Sorry, is that 13 or 16, like individuals contracted or
Yes.
percentage of the students that are eligible?
Individual contract.
Those are individual contracts.
So we have 13 currently, and on one, so that's 13 students or less?
Well, that's that thing I was kind of just saying. Without being too identifiable, really, I can't narrow it down more than to say we have 13 individual contracts for individual humans, interventionists that are in our buildings right now. Some of those might be on serving 1 student, right? There are some scenarios that we have potentially 2 adults with 1 child due to the severity.
And that's total for the district?
Those are just
And
numbers.
This is where, to remind people that when Laura talks about extraordinary reimbursement, that's the revenue we get back from special education at the state level for kids who have that extreme level of need that has such a high cost.
So this is the payment, what would the net be?
For most of these students, we're made more than whole at the moment. For the really extraordinary high cost students,
Right.
the ones that we're not being made whole for are the ones that we're now just receiving the block grant for, the special ed block grant, and not the percentage of a reimbursement. So the ones that are below 66,000 or just slightly over 66,000, those are the ones that are actually costing the district more than the high cost students.
So the
at
high
moment.
cost ones.
We receive
Receive the money.
all of it back.
So even though it looks like we've got 1.3 million, that's reimbursed from the state.
We will likely recoup all of that in reimbursement.
So that'll be
From-
part of the revenue coming.
That would be that's part of the revenue, but it's important to show the trajectory. Not only are the types of needs different, so as Tanya suggested, children with autism that need a high level of support, that contract costs more than students who have a CAT worker contract that's more behavioral. So there may be a shift in how many kids are having an autism contract versus the other kind of contract. And then kids who need two specialized folks with them all day long to be successful in school, those kinds of shifts. Plus the contracts have increased, obviously, in cost, just as everything has increased. But,
And we right now are reimbursed for these extraordinary costs, but we've already, as a state, dipped into next year's special ed revenue sources. And so we're starting with a very large deficit because there's not enough funding. So it'll be interesting with Act 173 and the changes and how this all plays out, because everyone's contracts are increasing. Everyone's students are increased need. So
we pay close attention to that.
Right, yeah.
Is it fair to say that we tell them our needs and they say how much it costs and that's the end of the discussion? I mean, this is not, they're really, we have no other option, right?
Right, well, the state regulates their what they
Okay,
can
that's it.
charge.
Okay.
So they are
They are
regulated.
regulated.
Particularly around tuition.
Go ahead. What else, Dorelli?
Oh, no. Do you have another question about that first row?
No.
Okay.
What's the second row?
Second row. There's some trouble. The second row are students that are out of district. So these are students who receive special education, we contract with very often, like SOAR, sometimes the Baird School, sometimes Laraway, right? You've seen those lists before, but there are out-of-district alternative programs we contract with to provide services for some students. That number has gone up, maybe gone back down, right? That number can change. It also sometimes is, right, and so this is the dynamic nature of this, it sometimes is ebbs and flows based on what might happen up above, right? So we try to educate students in the least restrictive environment. And so not for all students that in the mainstream, even with BIs, that's not the least restrictive, they need an alternative. But sometimes we sort of, if we're on wait list and we need support from NCSS and we're not getting it, we're sort of forced into this place, okay, then either they're in our setting, maybe not successful, or potentially out, right? So we have some hard conversations that happen, all those conversations happen through IEP meetings. So kids' teams are making those decisions with families. But that's what that row is, and those are the figures associated with it. When you look at our percentage of students out of district, we ride right around 8%, and we have for quite a while. The state would like us at, right now, the target is 6.25%. So they set targets, and last year that was the state average, so maybe that is the target, right? So however it gets figured out, but we are above it. And again, the work we're doing is, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, is trying to figure out how to get us more aligned, at least with that number, but really, the work is beyond that, right? It's going deeper than that because of not only is there sometimes not capacity for NCSS or other programs to support us, right? There's a capacity issue. There's also, it's not always the best thing for our kids, and it's expensive. And so we're looking at, we are continuing conversations and shifting them a little bit around how do we get that percentage back down. Question?
Just a clarifying question. Because I'm trying to understand this clearly, because I don't speak part, but, so these are the students that we can't service within our district and we are sending to other areas. Okay, and separate from those we contract with NCS, so there's not an overlap here. We're not gonna have someone who we service in and then we shift out.
They could follow sometimes they follow that progression, but they're not simultaneously getting the first one and the second one, right?
And so if the state is saying though that they want a lower percentage of students eligible, is that they want more of those students served within the district?
They want that lower than 8%. They want they don't want us to exceed. They're not, it's not necessarily like that's your goal, but they don't want us exceeding the 6.25% of students being educated outside. So the message is try to figure out how to do that in district.
Copy, okay.
The target used to be 4%. Nobody in Vermont hit it. So that's why it was 6.25. But, you know, we have a needy demographic, and we also already have alternative programming within our schools. So it's in a lot of work in prevention that happens. So I'll stop there and let them get to what they're doing.
Don has the question.
I just want in general, following this, I just read the last 2 or 3 months, another state where it's spending more, in New England, spending more money certainly than we probably are per student. But somebody did research, and I'm tossing this out for us to think about if that's true here, and in Vermont particularly. They determined that, you know, you're always looking for averages. We aren't looking for averages. Legislators are always looking for averages. State agencies are. That if you look at the housing available and the quality and the prices, and looked at then your students in special education and their needs, there's a pretty strong correlation. And I haven't worked in a lot of small Vermont districts, but I would say my gut feeling is that's true. Even if you look in Franklin County, you go to Fairfax, you're paying between $500,000 and $600,000 for many of the houses, if you read the messenger reports. You move that along in Enosburg, Richford, you probably can buy a house for half or a third. That doesn't mean that their students are any worse or any better, but it was very interesting to say there is a correlation between your available housing and the cost you're spending on students in need. So I'd like to have the agency that would follow up on that. I think it's true.
I would agree.
So, the ongoing work that we are engaged in is taking a look at our staffing ratios, caseload sizes and composition of caseloads, best practices to really ensure equity across all of the schools in our district. The special education teams are using the PLC, Professional Learning Community Models, to review data, to plan for students, to reduce the achievement gap. That is aligned with our MVSD and our school-specific continuous improvement plans. That's work that we're doing. I wrote in the board report about going to the CASE conference and beginning to engage with the Progress Center, which is out of the Office of Special Education Programs, which is the federal office for special education, to conduct an audit of MVSD's system strengths and see where efficiencies and efficacies can be improved. And as always, the work that we do out of the central office, Kosha, the director of curriculum, Tanya, and myself, we really work closely together to support the academic, social, and behavioral needs of all students, and that in turn benefits students in special education. Next slide, please.
With regards to the social and behavioral programming, so these are sort of some of the things that are happening right now that are getting at that idea of can we do more in district, right? So right now, for example, MVU's BST, so the behavior support team, is looking at tier 2 interventions, right? So the goal right now for that team is to identify what are some targeted interventions for specific students or a specific cohort of students that we could implement during their nest time. So they've got a time targeted, they've got the personnel targeted, right? Victoria and Kylie, that Steve was talking about earlier. Right now, we're just kind of digging through a little bit of what are the evidence-based interventions. So getting out of beyond just tier 1, which is universal best practices, you know, the behavior expectations for everybody, and not yet at tier 3, which is we can't do this here. We're trying to get in that middle zone of let's target the lagging skills for a subset of students and teach the skills, right? So really target that. So that's some work that's happening there. In each building, everybody has a continuous improvement team. Most schools are working within those target areas for the CIP. So the Safe and Healthy Schools area is where teams in each building are starting to really focus with a team on that tier 2 universal strategies. And so again, that those interventions that are classroom-based that can happen for everyone, but with these pieces in mind. MVU's got their alternative classroom that is continuing to be worked on and improved upon. We have this year assembled a district alternative programming task force. That's what we're calling it for the time being. But a group of us, sort of from a multidisciplinary group, so different lenses on the task force, looking at trying to understand where are our gaps, where are the biggest areas that we could impact, and then how do we start to think about alternative options or more options for students in district. So again, that trickle effect of, right, sometimes we don't have NCS as BIs, sometimes we have to use out of district, sometimes there aren't out of district placements. Like where along that continuum can we build some more options for students, and thinking specifically about how do we build an alternative, bolster the alternative classrooms that we may already have, extend the alternative programs that we already have, or look at the gaps that maybe are present and how do we build an additional alternative program or classroom. But we've done some site visits. We're meeting again to kind of look at that information and think about how we can move that forward.
You got your last line?
I think that's it. So, questions on any of that?
Is there a shortage of educational opportunities for students who need out-of-district contracted services? I know SOAR's been around for quite a while. I think I see another one down on Route 7. But does that indicate there's really a shortage?
Yeah. There are often wait lists for us, and that's something that I think a while ago we didn't experience, right? It used to be that maybe a couple of weeks or something for a process to happen, but these days we could be on wait lists for a very long time to have a student placed in an alternative program. And that's even at SOAR, which is right here, right? But the others as well. Yeah.
If you recall, a number of them closed a few years ago, and then the state has a moratorium on new independent schools being opened. So even if a group of people had an idea that they wanted to recreate Centerpoint, they can't do it. But schools can build our own. That's really where we're putting our efforts. And
There's so much wisdom in the legislature, it's overwhelming.
All right, well, Tanya and Wendy, I appreciate that. I know it was long to wait and it's a packed agenda and it's way past everyone's bedtime. But it's very useful to understand the distinction, and that's a very broad, for someone who doesn't come from education to really understand. So appreciate the information, so thank you. Any other questions? Good? All right, Laura, you have 1 minute for budget draft 3.
I'm tired. Okay, so budget draft 3. Oops.
Are you presenting
Yeah,
that?
I am. I didn't want to Make you do it again.
Never dance with me.
Here's budget draft 3. There are not really a lot of changes. You will see a variance column from the last draft. I'm just gonna go down to the bottom because that's what most of you guys do also. But we'll see that the increase from draft 2 has actually gone down or is now decreased about 111,000. So the overall increase is 1.6 million approximately. I'm gonna go over here to our workbook that you all have access to. Sorry, I was on. I have linked in the workbook for you the tax letter, the December 1 tax commissioner's letter, and also the statement from the governor. I don't know if you want me to take time to go through that and talk about that now. Okay, didn't think so.
Well, no, it's just because, I mean, that's public information, we you know, you can go and read the letter. I think the main takeaway is we are quite well positioned versus the expectation and the goal that is being put out from the governors and the legislature. So that's to me the main takeaway.
And our overall tax rate is much lower than the tax rates that are represented in that, yep.
Yes.
I do have one question for Julie. Is VSA mobilizing for testimony legislature on that?
Of course.
They are? Good. Well, I know Jeff Francis, I mean, he lived there, but I know you have new leadership.
Chelsea Myers
Sometimes new
has a
leadership seems like.
tight group of people that, and I'm not a trustee anymore, but that group is very active.
Yeah, good.
So budget draft 3, you can see the amount there, just over 50.5 million. It's an increase, as I said, of 1.6 million or 3.3% over the current year. This represents, if I'm using estimated revenues that I believe to be true at the moment, to offset the increase of, would give us a net ed spending increase of 2.1%. The only thing that's changed in draft 3 are some staffing adjustments for Highgate. These were things that we've been talking about with the building principal and Julie and the admin team, and we were ready to apply those. So 1 special educator and 1 support staff or paraprofessional has been reduced in the Highgate portion of the budget. And sorry, this is the nurse to health. It's actually at MVU. I didn't put it in its own category. That was just a funding code change from the nursing line to health.
And just so you know, that is based on the decision to shift a special educator. We have a vacancy in another school, so we expect that to be a movement. But that's an example of where the ratio of staff is too high in one school. We actually struggled with our Title I comparability around our staffing patterns between our elementary schools. So we really have to make some changes in staffing. And that was one that made the most sense, and that Yeshua, we talked about various scenarios, and that was the one that made the most sense for Highgate and the district.
But we keep the person in the district.
Yes, I believe we will.
Good.
So this, I just put a slide in here just to summarize the increases in the different drafts. Just to have it all in one place for you, you can see here the variance. So these on this side are the variances over the current year that we're in. And so you can see we started with 1.4, went to 1.7, now we're back down to 1.62. Part of the reason I wanted to highlight that is because we are talking a lot about what we're doing to save money or gain efficiency. And you can't see the whole thing here for some reason because the menu's on the bottom. Can you move that at all? But basically what I'm trying to point out is that we have basically a 2.2 million, we could have a $2.2 million increase that's represented in our budget draft. We are only noticing or realizing a $1.6 million increase because $614,000 of that has been absorbed. And so we're not realizing it because we have reduced staff or contracted services. I think the FTE, whoops, sorry. The FTE was 7.4 staff here and 1 contracted service. That makes up that 614,000. So if you're talking about savings, that's what that is. And then lastly, this is what the ballot language, I just want to keep this on everyone's kind of their mind because this is what voters would be seeing. So based on the information I have at this time, as far as our long-term weighted ADM, this budget draft 3 and the anticipated revenues, this would be the language that people would be voting on. So you can see there in orange, would be the budget figure. This would be the spending per pupil or per long-term weighted ADM, which is 12,047, much below this many people in the state. I think the range is like 10.5 to 18.5 thousand, or yeah, 18,000. And it's 1.67% higher than what we're currently spending, so very minimal. That was more than a minute.
It's all right. No, I really like the slide about the savings. That was something that I think it's important to show that we're going into, whatever the final number ends up being, you know, we are going into our final draft, eventually in January, that we have been consciously trying to save and minimize any increases that we don't feel are really necessary, and I think overall in a very good position. So I think that's good to highlight. And again, trying to do more with all the information we're getting tonight with less. And I just kind of give credit to all the director, staff, principals, like we're doing a lot, and we're, in my opinion, a bit of a model for what I think the state is actually aiming for. So I just thank you for that.
Is health insurance still fluid? I mean, I know numbers have been thrown out there.
It's been filed, it has not been approved, but typically when that happens, they're
It's pretty
fairly certain
close.
that that's gonna be approved, yeah.
And so we're building those numbers in our budget.
It's in there, it's almost 12%.
Are there any other questions on this? Because I'm gonna keep it moving along.
I appreciate, I wanted to have the special ed presentation even though I knew it was adding, just because we're getting in the final stages of the budget and I wanted you all to see, and they weren't able to come in November. So I wanted them both here and I wanted you to see what the trends are going into, before you finalize the budget.
No, I appreciate it. I like it. I'm sure everyone else does.
And
Okay,
next
now-
time in my budget presentation, I will go through the tax letter and sort of give you the tax rates over the years compared to where we are in the spending per pupil. Yeah, it's came a little late.
All right, thank you, Laura. Elaine, you're up. Check warrants.
I don't know, these numbers are awfully small. Okay, accounts payable, $1,502,588.24. Payroll checks, $55,811.08. Payroll other disbursements, $1,813,146.72. Payroll deductions, $764,032.66, for a grand total of $4,135,578.70.
Can I get a motion to approve the check warrants as read?
So moved.
Can I get a second? All right. All in favor of approving the check warrants?
Aye.
All opposed or abstained? All right, motion passes 8-0. We have a possibility of finding for executive session to discuss admin reviews. Can I get a motion for that?
I would like to motion that we have a finding to go into executive session.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Conversation objections? Julie for that, we'll be bringing in Julie for that. All in favor of the finding for executive session?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Alright. 0. Future agenda items, we have forward presentation Franklin and budget. Anything to add, Julie?
No, we'll be in Franklin for that meeting. Our, thank you to Jen and Rennick for supporting our principals. We will not have administrative reports from elementary principals at that meeting because they will, we give them a bit of a break between the two holidays. But Joyce will be there and there'll be a Four Winds presentation. I'm meeting with Joyce tomorrow. She'll tell me if I said the incorrect thing, and she's doing, but I'm pretty sure that's it. And of course, budget. And then in January, Dan in central office won't have a written report for the
I thought
first.
Dan was doing a second presentation
He will-
in 2 weeks, right? No?
But I just wanted to remind everyone, so if you're looking for those written reports, you will see, but you will have elementary reports at the second meeting in January. So
I'll apologize in advance because I will surely forget that, but I'm gonna try.
that's okay.
So
I'll
I'm
remind
sorry
you.
in advance if I ask you, you're like,
No.
dummy.
So yes, I think that's, and it's budget. Pretty much.
Budget season.
Through January.
That's all I want for Christmas.
The budget.
Okay, future board meetings is December 17th at Franklin Central School, 6 p.m. And we have possible executive session for the purpose of discussing complemental administrative reviews. And then do I need to?
So now is the time for us to make a motion to go into executive session.
Yes, that's right. Can I get a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion carried 8-0. Thank you, everyone.